All what they need is to be given rights, land rights, then develop this according to the memorandum.
Africa's electric vehicle conversation is often framed as a climate story. But before we even talk about carbon, we need to talk about power, land, and geopolitics. Because when an investor asks for land rights as part of an EV deal, that should immediately trigger serious questions. Land rights are not the same as renting space. They usually mean long-term, legally protected control over land, sometimes lasting decades, with development rights and protections that can outlive governments. If those rights are loosely defined, a country can later find itself legally constrained from intervening. That's not paranoia. That's how infrastructure power works.
Now, some will argue that land rights are nothing new, that they've long existed in mining, agriculture, and industrial projects. That's true, but those sectors involve extraction or manufacturing, where land use is central to the operation itself. This case is different. We are not talking about mines, factories, or processing plants. We are talking about EV charging ports, consumer-side infrastructure that, in theory, should require access and leases, not deep, long-term land rights.
That distinction matters. When land rights appear at such an early consumer stage phase, before local manufacturing, before value addition, it raises legitimate questions about intent, scope, and future control.
We have successfully concluded that they will establish these power stations in our public institutions. This doesn't require much space. All what they need is to be given rights, land rights, then develop this according to the memorandum of understanding.
We will store the energy from this PV system inside the cabinet, and later when the price becomes cheaper, then people come inside to charge. We can use the power from the ESS. Now here there are 19 charging ports, 11 charging piles. We have the 180 kilowatt fast charger and also 250 kilowatt charger, and there's one super fast charger called 600 super fast charger. So it can charge a car in only 10 minutes.
This context matters in Zambia's latest EV push, which gained momentum after investment talks in Shenzhen, China. A memorandum of understanding involving the Ministry of Green Economy, Qindal Information Technology, and Chinese energy company Dela outlines a pilot program focused on Lusaka. The proposal includes EV charging stations at public institutions, solar-powered energy cabinets, fast and ultra-fast chargers, and a pilot supply of 1,000 electric vehicles.
On the surface, this looks straightforward. But once land rights enter an MOU, the real question becomes how long, how exclusive, and tied to what exact activity. Because if land rights are broad, vaguely scoped, or linked to phrases like ancillary services or future expansion, they can legally weaken a government's ability to regulate how that land is later used, even if the original project quietly changes shape. Zambia at this stage is not manufacturing electric vehicles. It is firmly at the consumer and infrastructure preparation stage. The focus is on charging networks, grid integration, and public exposure to EVs. Structurally, that makes sense. Zambia's electricity generation is largely hydropower-based, making EV charging relatively clean. Zambia is also a major copper producer, a critical input for EV motors, batteries, and charging infrastructure. But mineral advantage alone does not equal leverage if a country remains only a host and consumer.
This is where geopolitics comes in. While China is positioning itself early inside Africa's EV and energy infrastructure, securing presence, access, and long-term operational space, the United States is moving in the opposite direction. Through tariffs and protectionist policy, Washington is increasingly closing itself off from global markets. Donald Trump may gain domestic political mileage by putting America first, but tariffs don't just punish competitors. They also push US companies out of fast-growing markets like Africa and the global South.
The result is strategic self-sabotage. While Chinese firms negotiate infrastructure access and long-term positioning, US firms become less competitive, less present, and less relevant. Africa, meanwhile, is not a marginal market. It is one of the largest future transport markets on the planet, not just for private cars, but for buses, motorcycles, delivery fleets, and urban mobility systems.
Whoever builds the charging networks, sets the standards, and secures early infrastructure access shapes that market for decades. This contrast becomes even clearer when you look at Burkina Faso. Unlike Zambia, Burkina Faso has already moved beyond consumption into production. It is locally manufacturing and assembling electric motorcycles that are already in everyday use.
That difference matters. Burkina Faso is not negotiating land rights to host EV infrastructure built by others. It is embedding electric mobility into domestic industry, skills, and value creation. The risk for Zambia is not the EV project itself. The risk is remaining stuck at the consumer stage, importing vehicles, hosting infrastructure, and granting long-term land access without transitioning into manufacturing, assembly, or technology ownership.
In that scenario, value flows outward while control becomes harder to reclaim. This story is not about whether electric vehicles are good or bad. It is about who controls land, infrastructure, standards, and future markets.
China understands this and is moving early. The United States, distracted by tariffs and political theater, is quietly removing itself from the game. And Africa must decide whether it wants to remain a customer or finally become a producer. Electric vehicles are just the surface. Land, policy, and power are the real contest underneath. So what do you think about this? Are we overreacting on the land rights being tied to EV deals? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. We read each and every one of them. This is war. We are reclaiming. See you next time.